hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Give My Head podcast, episode 90. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? 90 episodes we've survived. I'm Tim McGarry, joined by my comedy colleagues
Michael McDowell
and Damon Quinn.
As you know, ladies and gentlemen, we interview actors, writers, comedians, important people, nice people, good people, intelligent people. We've got an absolute superstar to talk to very, very shortly. But before we get to this young man, we want to talk and say thank you very much to our partner for this episode, our very good friends, Phoenix Energy. Not only do Phoenix Energy provide excellent mugs, by the way, Phoenix Energy are absolutely well known for one thing. They provide delivered gas to over 250,000 homes right across Northern Ireland, reliably and safely every single day. But there's a bit more going on behind the scenes. Alongside keeping homes warm and showers hot, they've got a dedicated team focused on energy transition, working on things like renewable gases such as biomethane. And the clever part is this can be delivered through Phoenix Energy's existing alternative fuel-ready network, which means they're adapting the system so their customers don't have to. It's all about doing what they do well today while getting ready for the future. Thank you very much, Phoenix Energy. To find out more about Phoenix Energy's energy transition work, check out the latest connection offers. Visit phoenixenergyni.com. Phoenix Energy NI. Check out the offers there. They can switch. Do you have gas?
I have
love
gas.
the gas?
Yes,
love
I'm
your
a
gas?
man. Yeah, I love my gas. Yeah.
Do you have gas, Dennis?
Oil.
We don't. Well, we're still going to talk to him anyway. But gas is far better, and you can switch to gas very simply and very efficiently. And the instant heat, isn't that right,
Yep,
Michael?
instant heat, brilliant to cook on.
Brilliant to cook on, and they're trying to help the environment as well by getting other renewable energy sources such as biomethane, which is basically cow's farts. I understand.
That's it.
I'm sure it's a bit more complicated than that.
I don't know. I mean, it's gas.
You've heard a lot of biomethane in your time.
That would improve our house.
So thank you very much to our partner, Phoenix Energy. Thank you for your support, Phoenix Energy. Ladies and gentlemen, as you probably know, if you're watching on YouTube, the Give My Head podcast, you know who our guest is. You'll know him, ladies and gentlemen. People of a certain age, don't want to take this the wrong way, Dennis, but people of a certain age will go, that man there was never off the telly for about 20 years. He was Ireland correspondent for the BBC for many, many years. Well-known journalist, Denis Murray. Welcome to the Give My Head podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm amazed, 90 people. I've been thinking hard about all this, looking back in the career when I was asked to do this. And I stumbled across a great line about Barry Cryer.
Oh, yeah, what a great comedian, Barry Cryer.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and somebody bought me a present of a biography of him by his son. So I was reading something about him, and apparently they had a tribute dinner for him not long before he died, at which Terry Wogan said of Barry Cryer, he was in his 80s by then, he said, Barry Cryer, forgotten but not gone. So I think that's what I am, forgotten but not gone. Because
if I say this doesn't feel right, because all my memories of talking to you, you always had a pint and a glass of brandy on the side. It doesn't feel right. This tea thing. It's not working for me.
Oh, I'm a coffee aficionado these days. My daughter is a barrister.
Oh, no.
Wow. One of those.
In London, and she put me on to a local coffee supplier called Grind.
Right.
And they do lovely coffee. And of course, she sends me this for Christmas, which caused lots of adolescent laughter in our house when I opened a present with Grind written all over it.
Just add the R, yeah. Well, Dennis, thank you very much for being on the pod. You are, I know, take this the right way, you're a mate of ours from the old days. Back
We
in
are.
BBC.
I'm delighted to say so. I appeared.
You appeared on Give Me
a couple of times, but I still think I've about 5 highlights in my career, and one of them was helping you write a sketch for Half Sketch.
Oh, right.
Your Radio 2 programme back in the day. I was chuffed to bits with that. I still brag about that. But it taught me something. I had a nice idea. And you two nodded sagely, but you didn't laugh. And I thought, so much for that, Right. And I heard it go out, and I didn't hear from you again, but you put it out in the show, and you changed it only slightly. But it got a really big laugh, and it taught me the difference between somebody who can say something funny and somebody who can turn it into comedy.
Yeah. All right, okay.
And you guys can turn it into comedy. And I said this to Tim before, that the great thing about Give My Head piece was considering there was only 3 of you writing it, the standard was unbelievable. I mean, Dick Clement and Ian Lafrene went over to him, I think, with Porridge.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he said on the first day they fired the chief writer. He said, we didn't have any writers, never mind the chief writer,
Yeah.
because there just weren't enough of them. So, you know, the Friends had 20 or 30 writers every week. And, you know, they were a bit uneven, I'll be honest with you, but at least once an episode I was on the floor. I think my personal favourite was, have you two done them dishes yet? No, we're trying to get elected. They haven't gone away. You know? On the floor.
And you did appear outside Downing Street for us, which was
I
actually
did, that was brilliant
in Joy
as well.
Street in Belfast.
The thing about that was, of course, we didn't have the money to go to Downing Street or create a set, so we got a house in Joy Street and we put a number 10 in front of it, and it didn't look too bad, but it was a wee bit shite. Like,
No, it wasn't. It looked the part.
but I remember, like, I mean, the designer was going, I'm not happy with this, because we were ostensibly, apparently getting thrown out of Downing Street.
That's
Consultant
right, yeah.
Prime Minister Tony Blair at the time, and you were the correspondent telling the story. And I said, don't worry about the set, because the audience will believe it, because Denis Murray's in the frame.
Oh, how sweet.
So they will just go, Denis Murray's there, we accept this. They're outside Downing Street.
I never told you this, but the director took me aside quietly and he just wanted to say one thing to him. What? And he said, it is impossible to overact on this show.
I'm taking that as an insult.
Hey. That's why I never told you.
You played the very straight man, yes, as we were buffed out of Downing Street. But
Can I tell you something, by the way? Joy Street was a lot more pleasant to work in than Downing Street.
is that right? Yeah.
Because the sun never gets into Downing
Oh,
Street.
yeah, it's a wee small.
It
narrow.
is Baltic in June, and it's also a wind tunnel. Even with London's wee microclimate, where it always seems to be
really
24,
warm,
25 degrees in summer, it's freezing.
Yeah.
And they never bring you in for a cup of tea neither.
Is there a garden at the back of it? Or?
There is. I've never been in it. Sammy Wilson once did a very funny speech at a DUP conference where he said he'd discovered Jerry Adams was a tree hugger and that he'd hugged a tree at the White House and he'd hugged a tree in the garden in Downing Street.
There you go.
And Sammy said a pity he didn't realise most of his party was in the branch.
Very good. Very good.
Oh, the DUP laughed a lot.
Yeah.
That's high comedy for the DUP, let me tell you.
You were the face of basically of the Troubles for a very long time. Well, where did you start? Were you some Malachy's boy? Were you?
I was, yes.
You
And
see.
I,
I'm sorry, just on another episode, recently we were boasting that they boast about Kieran Hines,
Yes.
Eamon Holmes, and Martin O'Neill, who wasn't there that long.
he was only there 2 years.
Yeah. But
I
they
actually
don't
met-
boast about me being like excellent.
Well, you're the most famous since I left. No, Kieran Hines, I did. This actually got into the Sunday World. They found an old photograph of me as third witch in Macbeth.
Wow.
And we were the turn in that show because nobody could see us. It was I saw a photograph, it was beautifully lit. Anyway, Lady Macbeth was Kieran Hines, and he can only have been 13 or 14. Don't think his voice had broken even, and he was brilliant.
Right.
Now I'm sure, like Andy, like Rory McIlroy, he has worked really hard at it as well. But there's no substitute for
something.
talent.
It's something.
The rest of us were schoolboys out of uniform. He was an actor aged 13 or 14.
Wow.
The curse of that play hit though, and the young fella, 17 years old, who was playing Macduff, died while we were rehearsing it. He had a brain episode, and his part was taken over at short notice by no less than Seamus McKee, who had to learn the third biggest part in the play in about a week.
Right, Seamus McKee, ex-journalist, of course.
Seamus
Very
McKee,
distinguished journalist.
ex-famous presenter of this
Yeah.
parish.
Yeah.
No, I met Martin O'Neill once at a Belfast Telegraph sports dinner, and I'd heard the story about Martin playing football in Somalia. Nobody had heard of him. He was from Kilray.
Yeah.
And he'd been boarding at St. Columns. And so the whole family moved to Belfast. He told me that they'd never heard of him in Belfast.
Right.
So he said the first day in St. Malachy's, I was the last to get picked for football in the yard. He said the next day I was doing the picking. I'm sure you are, Martin. I'm sure you are. Because I also saw him play for Distillery. And this again is the no substitute for talent. He was 17 and he was above the standard.
Yeah.
Right.
I watched him play. This Distillery's old ground is now the Westlink, sadly.
Yeah.
But there was a game there against Derry City, who were a good side with good Irish League standard defenders. And you have to be pretty skillful to play in the Irish League. And there was 2-2, and he'd no great pace, but he walked the ball around 4 of their defenders and smashed it in from 20 yards. And just there was a silence.
Yeah.
Like usually there was a cheer and applause, and all you could hear was people going, "Did you see that? Did you actually see that?"
Wow.
And then there was a cheer and a roar. So no substitute for talent. Yeah, I went to St Malachy's, and I have a lovely photograph which somebody found for me years later of a debating team I was in.
All right.
And we got to the final of the Belfast Chamber of Commerce debating team, where we faced a team from St Dominic's. And they wiped the floor with us. I mean, you look at the photograph, you think, what were you thinking, lads? You know, really. And their captain was
Mary McAleese.
Mary McAleese.
Oh, for some reason that just...
And I was phoned by an old BBC friend who was interviewing her for World Service. Do you know any stories about it? So I told him that one. And he said, "Well, it won't be part of the interview, but I will mention it." So about 2 days there, I could have phoned back. And he didn't say hello. He just said, she said, "Yes, she did wipe the floor with you." So she remembered it. But I remember you asking Noel Thompson. He went to Cambridge or somewhere, didn't
Yeah.
he? Or Oxford somewhere.
course.
And you said, was Queen's not good enough for you? Which made me laugh because I didn't go to Queen's because I wasn't good enough for Queen's.
You got into Trinity, did you?
I did, which became an achievement and is even more difficult now. But then I was lucky. They offered me a place and my A-levels weren't good enough to get straight into Queen's. And I probably would have got in off that clearing system they had. I couldn't be bothered. And Trinity offered me the place, so I thought, yeah, I'll go there. And at the time, Jack Lynch was desperately trying to get Trinity not to be independent and to join the National University of Ireland along with the other 4 UCDs and UCGs and UCC. And so Trinity would take anyone who wasn't of the elite, let's say.
Right.
So I went off to Trinity and found it transformative. I mean, that sounds a silly thing to say about going to university, but it just, I was bringing when you hear this, our eldest son went to UCD, the wife and I meet in Trinity, and he goes to UCD. I mean, talk about letting the side down. You know? So I was driving him home after his final term, and I said, "Did you enjoy uni as much as I did?" And he said, "Dad, nobody enjoyed uni as much as you did." And my closest friends are still from that era. There's a gang of us, we keep in touch. But it was
What did you study then?
It was an anachronism. It was called General Studies, and you spread your time evenly between English, French and history.
Right.
All right.
And they got rid of it pretty quickly afterwards and made it a double honours course.
It's kind of coming back though, that kind of spread
Well,
degree thing now.
Those arts degrees are kind of going out. But we had amazing lecturers like David Norris.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
The famous
Senator
David Norris.
Senator Norris, yeah.
Who I became quite friendly with. By the time I was Dublin correspondent 10 years later for the BBC, he was taking his case to have the ban on homosexuality thrown out. And he went to the Supreme Court in Dublin, who denied it on the most spurious of reasons. It was an absolute disgrace.
Catholic Ireland.
Well, it was held in the middle of that abortion referendum, the first one.
The 80s, was it?
83.
83, yeah.
And there was the Chief Justice read one that 2 of the justices agreed with. And can I say this?
Yeah.
He said the Constitution protects the family, so if homosexuality becomes legal, a slightly homosexual man might decide to leave his family.
Right. A slightly homosexual.
And the point was,
Just homosexual at the weekends.
exactly. And,
Help them out when they're busy.
yeah, I've retired now. You see what I'm doing at home. But the thing was that Gareth Fitzgerald, who was Taoiseach, wanted to use the Supreme Court for difficult political things.
Right, to get around things
he
and go to
tried to
court to say
get
this.
extradition changed by the Supreme Court rather than him having to legislate for it. And this was another one he wanted to do. So the state brought no evidence. Now, you guys all have the legal background. The case fails instantly for that reason alone. So the two dissenting judges said for that reason, and for the other reason, the European Court's going to tell us to legalise it anyway in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So anyway, they turned it down. It was horrible to watch. Anyway, we came out of the court, and Norris literally wept on my shoulder in a quiet corner. And he composed himself for a few minutes, and then went out his usual breezy self and faced the cameras.
Yeah. When you look at Ireland now compared to that period, you know.
There are two huge changes in my lifetime in Ireland. One is the Gaelic clubs. Do you remember if you used to drive down a Boreen in Kilkenny or Mayo? There'd be a field with cows on it and two sets of rusty posts at either end. And it wasn't cuts, it was all tussocks. That is now billiard table.
Yeah.
Perfect, with an enormous clubhouse, floodlights and two G3, whatever they call them, practice pitches. So that's a huge change in the fabric of Ireland. And the other one is the end of the Catholic Church, and probably damage to all organised religion in Ireland since then. And it all goes down to Chris Moore.
We had Chris Moore on this very programme.
Is he never? I don't think UTV and Chris and his team ever got the credit for that they deserved.
The Brenton Smith.
Which was the Father Brendan Smith
Father
thing.
Brenton Smith, yeah.
We all knew Chris was working on something to do with Brendan Smith, but we didn't know what it was. And he'd been working on it for ages and ages, and eventually Smith was convicted, and I think he was sent to jail.
He went to jail.
Yes,
He died in jail.
North and South.
That night, they were able to put the documentary out.
Yeah.
And I had known about some of this. You know, you get a feel for what's going on in somebody else's program. Now, the thing is, when somebody they've worked really, you don't interfere.
Yeah.
Now, in London, you might try and compete and get there first, but we all knew this was important, and Chris had been working. Chris and the guys had been working on it. And the thing came out, and I sat slack-jawed watching it.
Yeah.
And I phoned him the next day, and I said, "Are you busy?" And he said, "No, it being a Friday." And I said, "Well, come on, we'll go to the pub round the corner, and I will buy you a congratulatory beer."
Yeah.
So we sat in this little snug for a minute or two, and I said, "You do realise what you've done?" And he said, "No, what?" I said, "You've finished the political power of the Catholic Church in Ireland."
Brought down the government.
That's it.
At
Yes.
that time.
It
Albert
took a
Reynolds'
while.
government fell.
It did, but the thing was, we all grew up. I don't care if you're a nationalist in Northern Ireland, you're British background, because all your popular culture was British.
Yeah,
that's true.
The books you read and the movies you watched. Yeah. I learned this from going to Dublin. People in Dublin were talking about 40 coats.
Yeah.
And I was talking about Muffin the Mule,
Yeah.
a programme.
Thanks for clarifying.
Pardon me for a second. Nobody knew what I was talking about. And I think, anyway, that's another day's work. But we're a British background. And when it went out on UTV, it didn't create that much of a fuss, because we grew up with jokes about vicars and choir boys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was kind of understood in the ether somewhere.
Yeah.
And like the real horror of it.
Yeah.
But the
Hadn't
irony of it
occurred
all
to
was, though,
anybody.
that, I mean, certainly Chris did what he did, but the church did it to themselves through their
Well,
own
they did.
arrogance.
They did
you
entirely.
know.
But
And it wasn't just the actual just the things that were happening, and it was the cover up.
that's,
you know,
yeah,
it's almost,
exactly
you
my
know,
point.
Yeah.
It didn't have a big impact here, also because wasn't the majority faith at the time,
Yes.
and everybody thought that happens in that church, which Protestants had always suspected anyway, I suspect.
Yeah.
And I said to Chris, just watch out. I said, tune into Liveline on Monday after it's gone out in RTE. And right enough, Joe Duffy started off with something else. And there were people weeping down the phone at him saying it happened to me. And the dam burst.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Lifted
it
the
was,
rock,
and it was, it ended the credibility of Cathal Daly, who up to
Completely.
that point, who was all set to be the first Irish Pope nearly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it just,
No, we did the drama, as you know,
Yes.
based on Chris's book. You know,
I remember, I don't know if you guys have ever done this. Don't ever go and talk to sixth formers because they know no fear. They rip you in shreds. And one of these kids, it was in Methody, and one of these kids said, "What do you think you do is important?" And nobody had asked me that
That's a
before.
good question. That is a good question.
And you could say, yes, it is, because once in a while a Chris Moore comes along and changes the world.
Yes.
And like there was a whole movie made about it in Boston,
That's
which
right.
won the Oscars
Yeah,
best movie.
the
Sorry,
Grassy Globe.
I know the bloke who did it first, and he's like me.
Our drama was better than the Oscar-winning film. No, but I
Trail of
remember-
Trust, still available online. I think.
Absolutely, yes. And RTE showed it. They've shown it about 5 times.
Yeah.
The BBC paid for it, but RTE have shown it more
Splendid
times
channel
than the
that they
BBC.
are, yeah.
Yeah. No, but I remember I was doing my O levels when Concora broke at a Catholic school in West Belfast, in La Salle, like. And I remember all the jokes, you know. Always throw the prods, that's what they're like. Yes, indeed, yeah. Never see that happening in our church, would you, like, you know? And within 10 years,
Yeah.
all this comes about. Like,
Well, it's interesting you say that the GA pitches and the church collapsing is the most important thing. You didn't say Good Friday Agreement.
No, I didn't say the most
that's-
important. I said the most striking.
Oh, striking
thing.
to you, right? Okay.
No, the most historic thing that happened was the Good Friday Agreement. Now, I try to be as precise as I can. If you drive around the Irish countryside, it looks different to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It looks wealthier. It looks. I mean, Europe's done enormous things for Ireland,
Yeah.
which is something. One of the reasons there was Brexit was the English never really. The UK GB never really needed all that
Yeah.
help that Ireland needed and Portugal needed and Spain needed
Yes.
and all the rest of it, southern Italy and the countries that have been under dictatorships in Europe. And it's been a wonderful thing because the husbandry got better. Rules came in, you know. Can I tell you quickly? During the foot and mouth in 2001, we spent a day with a vet down in South Armagh. He said, I shouldn't be telling you this. No, tell me. And he said, we've had about 6 farmers come in and say sheepishly, do you remember I had those 250 sheep I got the European grant for? I don't really have them.
oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So anyway,
was a lot of that.
but I'm talking about the fabric of society with that, and the church thing's astonishing. I mean, they're selling a church in Dublin that was only built in the 1950s.
Yeah.
You know? But no, the most historic thing was the Good Friday Agreement, and I was aware of that on the day.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems was reporting that ahead of it you'd had the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yep.
You'd had the end of apartheid. So everyone was waiting for this conflict that was on their TVs to suddenly end in a nice way.
Yep.
And so every step, like there are things that were important that people don't even remember. Do you remember the Downing Street Declaration?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have forgotten that. That was really, really important thing for the 2 prime ministers to do, to say it in public. Mm-hmm. And it was very significant. But the first question I got in Downing Street was historic. I went, no. It's a historic event but whether it turned... No, I said, I had some smart line, but I said, if it turns out to be a historic event, what you need to flow from it is, first of all, an IRA ceasefire, then a loyalist ceasefire, then a set of all-party talks, and then all-round agreement.
Yeah.
Now, that's 4 things that are going to be amazing tricks all
This was
by
John
themselves.
Major, just to set it, John
Albert
Major,
Reynolds.
Albert Reynolds, standing in front of the Christmas tree, we all remember.
The least likely
Yes.
duo.
Yes.
But it was also
Sure.
after,
And
for younger listeners will remember
Yes.
1993. This was the horrible time of Grey Steel, Schenkelbaum. It was a rotten period, and everybody
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
this is just going to get worse and worse. But underneath there were movement happening, and they came together.
I was doing a thing up at Stormont on the 25th anniversary of Good Friday, and I happened to bump into Johnny Irvine, the old ITN and Ulster Television correspondent. And the first thing we said to each other was, people have forgotten awful the troubles were. I mean, I cannot find it again to print it out, but I stumbled one day across a list of the events of the week in which the agreement was made. Attempted murder, serious injury, pipe bomb thrown, device under a policeman's car, punishment beatings, kneecapping. It was all week. And
And that was in
you
2009.
forget just how daily it was, and you forget how awful it was. Do you remember the helicopters? I find this very striking. Anyone who grew up in Belfast for 20 odd years to the sound of helicopters, and then one day they were gone,
Yeah.
and everyone said, "The helicopters have gone. Isn't that amazing?" And the next day, they'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Normal life rolls back in very quickly, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I grew up in West Belfast. Helicopters every morning. You woke up to the sound of helicopters. And when you watched the Vietnam film, you sort of felt at home. It's all helicopters, you know.
Incoming! Where are you going out tonight, dear? Where to? The LZ?
Yep.
But it's amazing now that kind of we're a certain generation. We're early 60s. You're a bit older than us, but you
I'm a
talk
good deal older than you.
You're not that much, but you talk to younger people today, and those days are completely forgotten. You went younger people today don't know Ian Paisley. I remember when David Trimble died, and they basically had to explain to who David Trimble was, and they interviewed some 16-year-olds who said, "Oh yeah, I think I remember him from history class." And I'm going, "From what? From your history class? You're talking about?" So it has changed.
Well, if you think about it, if you started paying, I can remember the first news story that I actually remember being as a news story was the Manchester United Munich air crash.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yes.
Because
6:58.
the newsreader came on terribly solemn and wearing a black tie almost and started to tell us this. And it's the first time I remember actually news impinging in my childish life. So if you think about it, the Good Friday Agreement's almost 30 years ago, 1998. So let's say you had to be 18 to be interested. That means you were born in 1980.
Yeah.
Now, it depresses me that that's a lot. I was younger than that when the Good Friday Agreement happened than they are now.
Yeah.
But no, the Good Friday Agreement was historic, and I actually said this on the night. I fought off saying historic all the way through this. Even though amazing things happen almost every day. Like, the DUP said they'd sit in the same room as Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin said they would sit in an assembly, a partitionist assembly.
That's right.
You know, and they, looking back now, they look absolutely batty.
Yeah.
But they were tablets of stone with these guys.
But, I mean, you were there at the time. I mean, was it touch and go, or was it always going to happen to you?
I always thought it was going to happen, and if it hadn't happened then, it would have happened eventually. Because you had, I think, okay, quick political seminar for a second. I timed the start of the peace process from the hunger strike in 1981. For this reason, Bobby Sands got elected. But that could have been dismissed as a protest vote or the heat of the moment, or he was an inside prisoner. The really significant thing was his election agent, Owen Carron, being elected after he died. That showed Sinn Féin there was a vote that had never voted before for anybody out there. And I think that gave Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness and others an idea. And I think they worked on it from them. It's a thing that nobody else remembers either. In 1987, Sinn Féin came out with their first attempt at a peace document, which was called Scenario for Peace, which in some ways was risible. I mean, it was, there would be provision for, what was it, grants for Protestants to emigrate back to Scotland.
They'll get a ticket to the Lord Stranraer ferry.
And a suitcase.
What that led to was
Yeah.
that led to the meeting the SDLP, and one of the SDLP guys said to me they didn't know how to write a position paper because they were a wee sect. So were the DUP. They only ever talked to each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And once you got people talking to other people and saying that's a valid point, but here's another valid point. Oh, I never thought of that one before.
Yeah.
It also struck me that sometime in the 1980s, when I was reporting on a form of devolution we had at the time, Peter Robinson had realised, now you'd Hume on one side and the closest thing to him on the unionist side was Peter Robinson. Very, very clever. The only unionist, sorry, this is very insulting, the only unionist who thought beyond where he would be marching on the 12th this year. And he had a look ahead, and he realised the only way to secure the union was devolution. And that meant power sharing. Now, in the 80s, I thought that meant with the SDLP.
Yeah.
I didn't envisage at that stage that Sinn Féin and the Loyalist parties might be a part of it, which made it all the more powerful. But he had decided devolution was the only way to go. And Ian Paisley told me in that era that if they brought back devolution in the morning, he would be perfectly happy to... They brought Sunningdale back. It's 1973. He would be perfectly happy with power sharing if it was the SDLP, the Unionists and the Alliance Party, and he would form Her Majesty's loyal opposition. And I thought, well, you old so-and-so for bringing the first one down.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Finally, when they did do it, Seamus, do you remember the Seamus Mallon called it Sunningdale for slow learners?
Yeah,
Famous phrase. But it was... the one bit of insight I think I can give you is this. You had the Good Friday Agreement because enough people wanted it badly enough. Yeah. And you need both of those things. And the reason you have not had a united Ireland since is that not enough people want it badly enough. Yeah. And I keep hearing things that the time... No, it hasn't really. If you look at any of those opinion polls now, there's quite a sizable Catholic vote which will not vote for United Ireland. And I mean, imagine back in the day, would you have wanted the country to be run by them gangsters and the dog? You know, back in the day.
Back in the day. Back
Sorry.
Yeah.
Avoid libel suit very
Any
quickly.
lawyers watching?
Did you? I mean, you mentioned Peter Robinson there, but of all the sort of politicians, were there any you were particularly friendly with? Or?
I never got friendly with politicians because ultimately you were going to have to say something pretty horrible about them.
Yes,
Right.
And a lot of the politicians in Northern Ireland, especially, weren't awfully nice people, to be honest. Partly because they'd never been outside that little case, their little sect. I admired Gareth Fitzgerald because he changed Irish politics for the better. The one I was friendly with that I have to own up to is Dick Spring, right. Because he was in university when I was in university.
Right, he was a mate then.
Well, no, but he was an Irish rugby international, and he was 2 years older than me. You know the way when you're 2 years ahead of somebody in any academic institution, they're squirts. You look up to the people ahead of you. But I interviewed Spring. It was for a Radio Ulster thing called Views from the South. And you were supposed to write a thing like Alistair Cook. At the time, I was too busy with news. So I interviewed Spring, and I summed it up by saying, you're the youngest ever Deputy Prime Minister, you're the youngest ever Senior Counsel at the Irish Bar, and the youngest ever Labour Party leader. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's all downhill from here, isn't it? So he had the grace to laugh. And he said, that's very nice of you, Dennis, but he said, all the Irish public, the Irish electorate remember about me is that I dropped the ball under the posts at Cardiff Arms Park, which he did.
That's right.
And he said what he would do in later life would be his wife was American. He said his son who'd been born in America, he'd run his presidential campaign. So, but there was an interesting twist to that. The Irish political story was really easy to tell in the 80s because this is terrible. But to the British public, the guy in the black hat, who was Charlie Haughey, and the guy in the white hat, who was Gareth Fitzgerald, the absent-minded professor. Yeah. I remember Mary Holland wrote a wonderful piece about the two of them. She wrote it in the style of a Victorian romance, where Squire Haughey had won her heart but bragged of his consequence in the tavern, his conquest in the taverns of the town. So she was left with the local landowner, Gareth Fitzgerald, who was boring but reliable, you know. But it was a very easy story to tell because they were so different and they really disliked each other.
It went right back to Trinity or something, didn't it? Or
I don't know what it went back to, but I ended up. This is the first time I went from sorry to go back to where we started. I was lucky enough to get my job in journalism in the Belfast Telegraph. I'm really grateful to the Belfast Telegraph for giving me the start. But how that has changed is there was a bit of hostility to a graduate. Right. Because in those days, journalism was still, you went to the tech.
Yep.
And
did you know?
They were resentful, and not without some reason, because they felt that graduates had come in and been promoted far too quickly. Right. These days, I don't think you can get a job in journalism without a degree, and probably in journalism, and maybe a master's at that, which means you're losing out on a whole generation of working class kids. But I went from the Telegraph to RT's Belfast office. And I got to, and that was a big jump up from being the office junior, more or less. I wasn't the office junior, but I wasn't at the level of the likes of Ivan Littlesay, who was there at the time. He was kind of chief reporter. And so suddenly I'm at RT and I'm getting to interview Jerry Fitt. And I'm getting to interview Ian Paisley. But not like Jim Dougal, who was our boss, the late Jim Dougal. Mm-hmm. He would interview the Secretary of State, for example. So I then was lucky enough again to get this job as Dublin correspondent. And I suddenly went from being in the pool to being sort of playing with the big guys. Right. Mm-hmm. And so those two, Haughey and Fitzgerald, made an enormous impression on me because they were the first prime ministers I'd been in the presence of, which is a terrible way to end a sentence, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's slightly dazzling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To start with. Yeah. It gets easier when, by the time your career's over, it's the backbencher you knew who was wet behind the ears. Mm-hmm. When you're in the middle of your career, who's now Prime Minister, it's easier to get ahead, right? But it's just, you're slightly in awe of them. And I did that same interview with both Haughey and Fitzgerald. And here's the thing. Haughey's remembered as Mac the Knife, you know. Yeah. And Garrett's remembered as the nice, wearing odd socks and different shoes on the same day. I asked them both at the end of the interview, I said to Garrett, how do you want to be remembered? As the man who took Fine Gael from 33 seats to 72. I asked Haughey, how did he want to be remembered? As the creator of Éastana, the Society for Artists, for creating a tax-free haven for writers and musicians, for creating free travel for penny. I had jaws on the floor. So Mac the Knife wanted to be Uncle Cuddly. And Uncle Cuddly wanted to be the guy with the big...
It was Fitzgerald famously, when Haughey was got his first term, became Jack Lynch had gone and he got the leadership, and by virtue of that became Taoiseach. But he referred to him as coming from a flawed pedigree, and
his mother sitting up in the balcony.
Yeah, and there was a class thing going on there as well.
I never got to the bottom of that. Yeah. Because they thought, honestly, the Irish public thought Fitzgerald was insulting his mum and his dad. Yeah, and Garrett meant something entirely different.
Yeah. Mm. Yes. Well, yes, probably.
But it was taken.
Well, it didn't go down. It went down as he was having a go
very badly.
For being a world class boy.
And it was, but Garrett was somebody who he had a big impact on the election that got Mary Robinson elected as the first woman president. That was a great story to cover. Yeah. Because it was underdog actually wins. Yeah. You know, it was like being there, sporting allusion, when the goalkeeper headed the winner for Carlisle back in, you know, she won it. Yeah. And honestly, I'm such a sentimental old fool. She came down to the count centre and what do you owe to your victory to? And she said, she thanked everybody, and she said, and finally, Mran Aheron, the women of Ireland, the hand that rocks the cradle has rocked the system. And all the children, oh God, that's corny. Oh God, that's, I went, you'll all use it. You'll all use it. But I actually got a chill when she said.
I was going to ask you, I mean, you've seen some horrible things in your time.
Yes.
Do you get emotionally invested in things? Can you be emotionally invested?
Oh, yeah, I cannot.
You cannot. You mean you've got horrors and
my younger son that told me Game of Thrones was unsuitable for me. I tried to watch it because I like Sean Bean as an actor, and they killed him off.
I know.
And
spoiler.
But what got me was I hate violent movies. Another wee feather in my cap was I got to do Film 96 once with Barry Norman.
Yeah.
the 3 Irish films came out together, and I was asked to go and see them all. And I got to Ardmore Studios and everything for private viewing of the Michael Collins film.
Right.
All right.
And I really enjoyed the Michael Collins film. The other two, God, I should have prepared this. One was about the Shankle Butchers, which was superb and never saw the light of day.
Oh, yes. Was
Nothing
that the one
personal.
BJ was in? Was that
Yes, that was
Is that Resurrection Man?
Resurrection Man?
Yes.
I thought it was
Yes.
called Nothing Personal.
Oh, there was
something
nothing
like that.
personal as well.
That's the one I saw. And the other one
I
I saw, which I can't remember the title of, was about the hunger strike that had Helen Mirren in it.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Some
yes,
other
Some
son.
Other Son.
Some Other Son.
Yeah.
And it was the year after an unbelievably youthful producer came over to interview me here. And I was nervous. He asked me about 10 different questions, and it was only by question 9 I relaxed. I thought, I'm done film 96. You know. And and my opinion even then was I'd been to see Braveheart and hated it because of the violence for no good reason. You can have a battle scene like in Saving Private Ryan, in which there are a couple of gory bits, but you're watching D-Day. So maybe it's in my head, but I cannot watch violent movies. I cannot watch It's a Wonderful Life without bawling my eyes out. Don't ask.
Here. No, same here.
And
Come on, will you get the wee bell at the end? And anyway,
Oh, I know. No, the bit that gets me is the bit where he stops the guy from poisoning.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The chemist, yeah. That's
Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Sentimental old man.
I get triggered occasionally. I've done a couple of talks with a bit of a slideshow. And every time I come to talk about the Omagh bombing, my voice goes, and it's going to go again now. And I can't help it. And I would love to be able to say, because it was, and I remember asking my friend Tom Coulter, why is this bugging us so much? And he said, because we thought it was over.
Yeah.
We weren't mentally ready for it, like if it had happened before.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, can I just say this? I hope this doesn't upset anybody. There's one good thing about the Omagh bombing until recently. There hasn't been another one.
Yeah,
It was so horrible and so shocking
yeah.
and so unjustified. And that's what... one of the reasons that the IRA knocked it off was the leadership realised that they had stopped thinking about why they were doing what they were doing. They became what they did. And if you listen to any of the interviews with old volunteers who are in the IRA, none of them talk about the United Ireland. It's all about hitting back and hurting the Brits. And I mean, and up to a point, I can understand that. If you have the mindset that these are oppressive invaders. But none of them talk about the United Ireland. None of them, and freedom. They occasionally would say freedom, but it was all about we are what we do, and they became worse by the day. You know, the human bombs, as you say, the Shankle bomb, for God's sake.
Yeah. Do you look back and you go, what was the point of any of that?
Absolutely none.
What
At
effect
the end
did that
of it.
achieve for anybody?
Well, it probably had to be gone through. That's a dreadful thing to say.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Do you know something? Another thing that bugs me as well is Susan McKay, who's a freelance journalist. I think she's the journalism ombudsman in the Republic now. She wrote a book where she interviewed people who had lost people in the early Troubles, mostly, who'd never been interviewed. And the book was launched one night, and our late colleague Paddy O'Flaherty went to the book launch and did this piece for Good Morning Ulster. And in every single case, he said to the people, "Why are you telling your story now? Because nobody asked me before." And that's the bit that puts me in the verge of tears. We all remember the big ones.
Yeah.
And we all remember the people we knew and our friends. But if you go through Lost Lives, one Monday night,
what
the
a book.
12th of February,
Yeah.
some guy walking home, nobody claimed responsibility.
No, it's funny. I did a lot of work on the guys that put cutting together Pop Goes Northern Ireland, which is obviously a Legacy of the Troubles
okay.
thing.
Absolutely.
And that was what murder do you choose? You know, it literally was like just a litany of people getting gunned down the street.
But also our job as well was to, because of the nature of it, you had to ring up relatives and say, look, we're covering your such and such a murder. And in fact, when I was contacting a lot of relatives, the exact same thing happened. Nobody's asked me before.
Yeah.
We were thanked. I was genuinely thanked for covering,
Yeah.
the UDR man and Fermanagh, who nobody remembers because the next day's news was blah blah, and it's kind of shocking and depressing and all that. But we're being thanked for showing it.
Yeah, a lot of people chased us away.
Yeah.
Funny, somebody else pointed this out to me. It was a horrible thing to have to do. To go up and, remember, David Capper was asked what was the worst thing about his job, and he said that long walk to the bereaved relative's front door. If you met cousins and uncles, they'd chase you.
Yeah.
But the family themselves would say, "Come on in, son, have a cup of tea."
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was never in a working class house where I wasn't offered at least a cup of tea. And like, the murder was yesterday.
Yeah.
And I mean that for both sides.
Yeah.
And maybe the widow wouldn't really know what was going on, but particularly women, they would not let you sit down to do the interview, even if you were in a hurry. You had to have a cup of tea and a piece of shortbread. I mean, extraordinary. But one of the things that, and I've said this before, but the year after Oma, almost the first prayer at the memorial service a week later. I know the memorial service a week later after Oma, almost the first prayer was, "We thank those who've told our story to the world." Now, I wasn't in Oma on the Saturday, I went up on the Sunday. I was just coming back from my holidays. And I was worried about, you'll get this, nothing but vultures and who do you think you are and all this, which you occasionally got.
Yeah.
And the people of Oma gave us the most astonishing welcome. And people would stop you and say, "Do you know what happened to me?" And in fact, we had to walk a mile because of the configuration of the town, from where all the satellite trucks were and your rented van was, and you had to walk a big circuitous route back to where the live point was, facing across the road and up the hill. And I was walking alongside this young fellow, really groovy guy in a leather jacket, and he'd holding a bunch of flowers, and like him holding a bunch of flowers was an unlikely sign. So I said, "Did you lose somebody?" And he said, yeah. He said, "My brother." I said, "Oh, well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I don't really know." And so we just chatted as we walked along, and there was no camera, no microphone. We were just chatting away, and he said he liked singer-songwriters. I'd liked a band called, I thought he said Sash. And I said, "Sash? There's a band called Sash." He went, No, Slash. The guitarist Slash. So the two of us had a laugh, and he put the flowers down, and I said, "Do you want to say all that to the guy?" No, he don't. And he'd gone up to the hospital. He went looking for his brother and couldn't find him. So he spent the whole night at the hospital helping out the medics.
Wow.
And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "Ferried blood, picked up limbs, put them in the bins." And I said, "This guy's talking to me like it's normal."
Yeah.
And so I started to freak out slightly that this bothered me for a long time. The police and soldiers and the doctors and the paramedics and the ambulance men, they're all doing something useful. I'm just standing there telling stories. But it was after Oma, I realised that's an enormous, and after that thing about Susan McKay's book, it's a really important thing to do, is to tell people stories. And the thing I always say to young journalists is, whatever job you end up in, always remember your job's about people. And the late Jim McDowell was very aware. He had great ethics for a tabloid journalist. He was born to be a tabloid journalist. But he had better ethics than most broadsheet journalists. And he deeply cared about the effect a story would have on the people he was writing about. He was very careful with it.
What do you...
Do you want a funny story? A world exclusive. Right. I was to raise the atmosphere. The night I was telling you about in Downing Street, where the diplomat, an earlier event where he was with John Bruton, who had succeeded Albert Reynolds as the Irish Prime Minister. It wasn't the Downing Street Declaration. And the BBC said, "Right, we've got a live point for you in Downing Street, and you can talk us into the news conference and you can analyse it afterwards." And I said, "Hold on a minute. This happens to me all the time. I'd like for once to be at the news conference, And they said they've reserved a seat for me in the front row. And they said, "Well, all right, then off you go." So they had the news conferences. Now, you've heard this before, but Downing Street is the TARDIS.
Yeah, yeah.
It is unbelievable. It's the size of, I don't know, the Aviva Stadium.
Inside, yeah.
And, anyway, they hold the news conferences in a reception room on the 3rd floor. Like, I had enough trouble getting in here, ladies and gentlemen. So and I was younger then, too. So up to the 3rd floor, and we did the news conference. And I was dying for a pee. And there were these three. The British government specialised in ladies of a certain age. When you rang the Downing Street switchboard, hello, Downing Street. Hello, can I have Alistair Campbell, please? Oh, is that you, Dennis? Oh, you haven't phoned us in ages. Oh, I just picked it and put the knitting down. So I said, is there, gents? And they said, it's on the ground floor. So I haven't time to do that. So I just sit through this news conference like that. So things over, ran downstairs, and this is true of Stormont Castle as well. The loo has no sign on it, and it's decorated the same as the wall. You don't even see it's a door. So I said, where's the loo? And over there. Where? There. He said, there's a doorknob in the middle of nowhere. So
very professional.
in there, and it's so gorgeous, like their hairbrushes and sort of stuff on there, and linen. Oh, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the door opens, and in comes the same major press officer, Mr. Hallam, who takes one look at me, and I take one look at him, and he looks over his shoulder and says, "Be careful what you say in here, Prime Minister. There's an august member of the Fourth Estate already in here." So in comes Major. Hello, Prime Minister. Hello, Dennis. Stands beside me.
As a wee.
Over to wash the hands. I thought this is one to tell the grandchildren. So nights are fair drawn in now. I mean, what did you say to the loo, you know? And so we started chatting away, and suddenly he finished drying his hands and he turned to me. I was astounded by this. And politicians very, very rarely look at you. Blair was terrible for this. Tony Blair only looked at you once when you were asking him a question. And then his eye line was all over the place. Mm-hmm. So Major looked at me and delivered this lecture about nobody understands how difficult this is. Nobody understands the risks I'm taking. Nobody understands how much I care about this. Nobody does. I was really... And this ultimate grey man, he was never like that in public, delivered this extraordinary, passionate speech about it. So I said, it was very interesting. And I was so shocked by it. I didn't really... So we started to walk out, and they opened the front door of Downing Street, and there's a battery of lights and flashes going on. Oh, shit. And to this day, on the rushes, you see Major walk out, and we figure behind me, oh, behind the door. But I thought afterwards...
You weren't able to report that, were you?
If I... Not at all. I just thought, if I was his media manager, I would say, do that in every speech.
Yeah.
Show the real you. And he did care about it, and he was being stymied by a lot of his Tory backbenchers who didn't want any peace process at all.
Of course.
Can I ask you, it's like we're running out of time because you tell too many good stories. Serious issue about journalism at the moment. You've got Trump accusing anybody who disagrees with him of being fake news and all of that. And is it becoming harder and harder to be a journalist? If you're BBC, people go, you're anti-Semitic, or you hate Israel, or you're pro-Palestinian. It's hard to be objective these days, is it?
I honestly don't know, because I'm not doing it anymore. I did quite a lot of work after I'd retired, and I have to tell you this because I was teasing Tim about this earlier. I did a lot of work for Radio Scotland. Now, what's the great thing for Northern Ireland journalists doing Radio Scotland? They already know what a Fenian is, and what an orange bastard is, you know.
Yeah, right.
So it made, for an English, I tell you this as well, I thought I was a really good correspondent, and that I'd really sort of drawn the British public into being interested in this whole thing. And do you remember the DUP did a deal with Theresa May after the 2017 election? Yeah. I was asked to do, it's called the afternoon circuit, where from 2 o'clock to about 5:30, you do a succession of regional and local radio stations around the whole BBC network. Right. like Radio Jersey,
Wow.
Radio Cambridge, Radio Oxford, Radio Newcastle, Radio Leeds, all that sort of stuff. And the first question in every single interview was 2017. Who are the DUP and what do they stand for?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I was approached by network thing. I did a couple of network things about to write sketches about the DUP, and they were shocked to discover that some of them were believed in creationism, and shocked to discover that they'd a history of
the thing about journalism is the rules have changed.
Yeah.
In my time, I mean, the thing was, I did not care for Thatcher. Not as a person, but as a politician. I thought she was doing terrible things to the country. But I admired her approach to Northern Ireland, which was the Anglo-Irish Agreement, which made Good Friday possible, by the way. It was very significant. Yeah. She did it against her instincts too. But I respected her because she'd won all these majorities and she was a serious politician. And her secretaries of state, like Tom Kiat King, as Paisley promptly dubbed him, Tom King did something that nobody ever talks about. It was hugely significant. He brought in tough fair employment legislation,
that's right.
of which you guys are well aware.
Yeah.
But it was with teeth. And it changed Northern Ireland. You cannot throw bricks at somebody you've had a chat with at the water cooler 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
And it massively changed nobody talks about
fair
it.
employment was a major issue, and then within 10 years it disappeared.
Absolutely.
Nobody talks about it today as an issue.
So an enormous contribution. And Peter Brook, quick story about Peter Brook. After he'd been Northern Ireland Secretary, he came back to Northern Ireland to launch a parliamentary report on something to do with Northern Ireland. And I knew it wasn't going to get on, but I sat through it anyway when I heard about it. So it got to the very end, and I said, Mr. Brook, and I threw him a question. And I said, look, I realise I'm asking you to sum up a 300 report in a soundbite, but can you try? And he said, Mr. Murray, you know perfectly well, I am completely incapable of a soundbite. I mean, it's very likeable. I went to a dinner once where in the BBC with the chairman after the what do you call it? Not the Reith lecture, the Dimbleby lecture had been done by Senator George Mitchell, and I was a late invitee to the dinner afterwards with the Dimbleby sons. Do you know who the life and soul of the party was? Michael Howard.
Michael Howard?
Really?
Yeah, Mordor. The Home Office was called Mordor when he was
leader of the Conservative Party.
Fantastic company. And then again, the same thing with Labour. People said to me when Brexit was on, I bet you wish you were working now. And I would say, no, I'm glad I'm not. Because I would have had to say, how stupid are you? When Boris Johnson came along, I would have had to say, is this party right in the head that they're picking this guy?
Who was the worst politician you ever met?
I can't think of an answer to that because there's so many ways of interpreting it. Bad at politics, Keir Starmer. Yeah. And I have never met him. My heart goes out to poor wee Keir. Yeah. I mean, if you compare him to some of the sleazebags who are having a go at him.
Yeah.
But the rules in politics have changed.
Yeah.
How did Trump survive mocking a disabled journalist?
That was one of the first things he did, yeah.
But that would have, 10 years ago, that would have finished any European politician. Right there.
Yeah.
The recording on the bus, which we'll not go into.
Yeah.
But there's always an excuse for him. That was locker room talk. When he says something offensive, that's just a joke. He swears, and all the born again crew in America say, he's on president under pressure, who wouldn't swear under that pressure. When he puts out a cartoon of the Obamas as apes, it was an aide did it. Yeah. Now, that's not that. In my time, that just was not survivable. The one thing you could not survive was misleading the House, and that's what brought down Albert Reynolds when Dick Spring decided he had misled the House. But the rules are different, and politics is different because of social media. there's all this hate around the place. Can anyone explain to me how the only Jewish party leader, according to all the right-wing press, is anti-Semitic?
Yes, exactly.
And they then do 1930s German-style cartoons of him?
With a very large, completely, yeah.
You know, I hope you don't mind me. When the election results came out last week and Reform had done so well in England, Tim and I were having a chat about it online. This is how it makes you proud to live in a country run by Sinn Féin.
That would get you cancelled now if you were still working for the BBC, Dennis. Listen, we've done over an hour here for now. We didn't even get started in what I wanted to ask you because you just chatted
Well, you
away
can
like
edit.
you do.
Throw it in.
No, edit. No, talk about it. Forget that. You're coming back.
I haven't even done drum cree yet.
We didn't even get your drum cree stories. We didn't get them. Dennis, thank you very, very much. That was for younger listeners, might be going
Educational.
Educational.
Do you think find that, Dan? Did you find that educational?
Yeah. Can I just say before you finish?
Yeah.
I got laughed at for this, but after the Oma bombing, I gave enormous credit to the DJs on Radio Ulster.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Hugo had to go on air after the 6 o'clock news, and he'd a pile of happy clappy Hugo music and a pile of birthday requests for Auntie Mamie and 60 and that. How did he? And he did a great show.
Yeah.
Jerry Anderson was counselling people on air. George Jones, I know none of them work for Radio Ulster anymore, but George Jones decided he would do 50s music, sort of took the sting out of it. I think they made a real contribution. I think you guys did as well, because it was the first time on a regular basis on our screens somebody sat on that screen and said, "You're stupid, aren't you?" And what's funny is, you know it. I said, Have them dishes done themselves.
So but between the two of us, Dennis, we sorted Northern Ireland out. Denis Murray, thank you very much for being our guest on the Give My Head podcast. That was brilliant. Thank you very, very much to our wonderful sponsors, Phoenix Energy. Thank you for your support. Go on to phoenixenergy.ni.co.uk, find out about their switching process and all of that. We really appreciate it. If you like this, like and follow, and don't forget, I'm on tour still with my Height of Nonsense. I'm in the Lyric Theatre on the 29th of August. Get your tickets now. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we're absolutely honoured, and thank you very much to Mr. Denis Murray. Thank you, Denis. Thank you, Denis.
Absolute pleasure, gentlemen.